Joining me tonight on Times Now is former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, served under the Bill Clinton regime. Thank you very much, Dr. Summers, for joining me. So let me ask you, Dr. Summers, let's look back at what you said in April in response to Trump's 10% baseline tariff. The situation has grown many times worse since then. But here's what you said in April. Never before has an hour of presidential rhetoric cost so many people so much. The best estimate of the loss from tariff policy is now closer to $30 trillion per family of four. That's about $300,000. Do you believe those numbers need to be revised in terms of the damage that it causes every single American family?
I think it does need to be recognized that the market had a very dramatic response, the stock market, to the immediate announcement of the tariffs, and the calculation you described was based on that very large stock market response. Since that time, markets have rallied, and so the kind of destruction of wealth that occurred in the immediate aftermath of the tariffs has, to a very important extent, been reversed. I think that more reflects the speculative psychology of the markets than some fundamental judgment. And so my fundamental judgment continues to be that the tariffs, by degrading the world economy and by hurting American consumers, are going to be very burdensome. So I regret the decision to engage in the kind of tariffs that the United States has engaged in. I think it's a poor idea for Americans as consumers who are going to pay higher prices, a poor idea for Americans as competitors who are now going to have much higher priced inputs than they otherwise would have had to have. It's a poor idea for the United States as a pursuer of security because it is alienating our traditional allies. And I think it is a poor idea from the point of view of stability of the global system, because much of that stability has derived from a sense of the United States as a trustworthy country, and that's something that's being eroded here.
So do you see Trump backing down anytime soon or backing off at all? I
wouldn't presume to predict the actions that the Trump administration will take. I frankly think that there is some bit of element of pragmatism in that administration, and in the event that you were to see very dramatic market responses to their policies, that would make it more likely that there would be some kind of reversal of the policy path.
So let me ask you, are you surprised that President Trump has singled out India with a 50% tariff slab for using Russian oil, buying a lot of Russian oil? Not the same done to China. China buys more than India. Any method in this particular approach?
Nothing surprises me with respect to President Trump, who in many ways makes being surprising a crucial part of his policy process. From my perspective, the relationship between India and the United States is profoundly important. The world's two largest countries that choose their rulers in democratic elections, connected by many, many things, the English language and affinity for technology, the remarkable diaspora from India that has contributed so much to our country. So it seems to me that rather than attacking in the trade and economic sphere India, the United States would be far better off partnering and building a relationship with India. It seems to me that India is located in a very dangerous part of the world geography where very staunch adversaries of the United States like China and Russia reside. And so it seems to me that it would be very much in our interest to cultivate friendship with India. That was the strategy of President Clinton, who I served. That was the strategy of President Obama, who I served. I believe that was the strategy in important respects. Think of the nuclear deal, for example, of President Bush. So I have been sorry to see President Trump single out India to be a victim of his trade wars.
Do you find it rather rich on President Trump's part to say that India is buying Russian oil when United States continues to buy uranium, palladium, fertilizers from China and Russia as we speak, and that's not seen as financing the war against Ukraine?
I'm not able to comment on the specifics of those transactions and the necessities that may have arisen and affect those purchases by the United States. And certainly I see China and Russia as having important differences in the current global environment. But I think it is fair for the United States, when there has been a kind of collective effort to constrain Russia globally, and when oil sanctions have been an important component of that collective effort, for the United States to be very concerned about any country's efforts to circumvent those collective sanctions and to profit indeed from the existence of those sanctions. I don't think American policymakers are wrong to have some concerns about that. I think it's almost inconceivable that if it were my recommendation, it would be to pursue the kind of tariff policies that have been pursued with respect to India. But I do think the concern about India's enabling Russia in the way in which it's purchased oil is something that I find quite understandable.
China? U.S. doing business with China. They're buying more oil from Russia than India is.
I understand, and I think that the warmth of relations between the United States and China is considerably below what has been the warmth of relations between the United States and India as fellow democracies. And I don't know about you, but I tend to expect more loyalty from my friends than from my enemies. And so I think that may account for the disappointment with India. There may be a sense that as a democracy, it would be better for India to be in somewhat more solidarity with other democracies.
So the question from India is bullying by America only reserved for its friends, not its enemies?
I think the United States is applying very substantial pressure through export controls, through many different ways to China. And I certainly would hope that the United States is standing firm with respect to its adversaries. Far be it from me to be the defender of the Trump administration's policies, which I think I've made clear on many occasions and in many different spheres, I find to be highly problematic.
Well, so let me ask you. Do you think the Trump policies are helping America? How do American people really gain from these policies? And what does it do to a household expenditure with the kind of tariffs that are being applied to imports coming from various countries?
I think the tariffs are going to make Americans poorer. They're going to make the American economy compete less well. And they're going to make the United States less secure as a nation. And they're going to corrode any sense of global community, which I think is something very important with all the problems the world faces. So I think the tariffs represent a very serious error of U.S. policy. I hope that I'm not in a position to judge the relevant legal authorities, but I hope that the judges who have found these tariffs to be illegal will be approved and have their decisions ratified when the appeals make their way up to the Supreme Court, because I do think the tariffs are very, very damaging.
What do you think about Prime Minister Modi?
I've been, as I think people all over the world have been, enormously impressed by the energy, the drive, the determination that Prime Minister Modi has brought to India. I have wondered sometimes whether it wouldn't be better if his tremendous energy and drive for public activity couldn't sometimes be paired with a greater commitment to pro-market reform that simply relied on the power of private incentives to get things done without government coordination and control. But I think that the mark he has left on India and the acceleration of growth that has taken place during his time represent landmark achievements in Indian economic history.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Dr. Summers. Thank you for joining me with your views. Plain speak, as you always do. Pleasure to have you on Times Now.